I try not to be prone to hyperbole here on the Morning Pit or in things we do on Panther-Lair.com and even social media, which makes me kind of fail at social media, I guess. But I got to be honest, I think this week's mailbag might have some of the best questions we've taken in a long, long time. Just glancing over them before we started here, I'm really excited to talk about some of these topics, some pretty interesting topics, and I actually want to hear your thoughts on some of these questions too. Because I don't have any, some of these questions, I don't have great answers that jump to mind. So I'm going to be kind of working it out here as we record this video. And I'd like to hear your responses on a few of these questions too. It's going to be a fun one here on the mailbag on the Morning Pit on youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. All right, it's Friday. It's the end of the week. You know what that means? It's mailbag time here on the Morning Pit on youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. It's one of my favorite days of the week. I think it is my favorite day of the week. I think most people will probably say that about Fridays as well. And I enjoy it because we get to do these mailbag editions of the Morning Pit. We get to take questions from the Pit fans on Panther-Lair.com and then answer as many as we can here. There were like 8 or 9 questions posted at the time I sat down to record this, and I hope we get through all 8 or 9 of them because they're really good questions, some interesting topics that we'll get to. Of course, we're going to tell you what we do here. It's youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. You like this video and subscribe to our YouTube channel so you don't miss any of our Pit video content, these daily morning Pit videos. We do them Monday through Friday. We have a live stream we do every Wednesday night at 8:30 p.m. for an hour. Me and Jim Hammett get together and talk Pitt sports. We have our post-game show that we do live after the game. We'll do it tomorrow after the Notre Dame game, and that'll be right here at youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. Hoping to start around, I don't know, what time does the Notre Dame game start? 3:30, something like that. So hoping to start around 7 would be cool. I think that's what we did with the Wake Forest game last week, although I imagine the commercial breaks might be a little bit longer because it is Notre Dame. But nevertheless, it's a lot of fun to do those live streams after the game, and I think people enjoy tuning in for them. So you should try to make a point of that as well. The way to make sure you don't miss the live stream is to subscribe to our YouTube channel, youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com, and then you can turn on notifications so you get an alert sent right to your phone every time we go live or every time we do anything here at youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com, and then check out the website, Panther-Lair.com, Pittsburgh.rivals.com to get all the Pitt sports news, football, basketball, and recruiting, plus message boards to talk with other Pitt fans. And of course, we have to tell you about Home Field. HomeFieldApparel.com is the website. Home Field is the company, and their product is pretty much unmatched on the college gear landscape right now. T-shirts, sweatshirts, sweatpants, bomber jackets. Dad has all kinds of stuff that looks better than anything you're going to find pretty much anywhere else. It's all right there at HomeFieldApparel.com, and their pick collection is out of this world. I mean, I think it is truly outstanding. I think they're going to have new stuff coming out for basketball season, but the stuff they have out right now is just dynamite. And don't forget, if you go to HomeFieldApparel.com and you use the promo code LAIR23, that's LAIR23, you will get 15% off your first order. LAIR23 is the promo code. 15% off is the discount on your first order. And HomeFieldApparel.com, HomeFieldApparel.com is the place you need to go to get the gear and get the discount. Go check it out now, HomeFieldApparel.com. I think it's you won't be disappointed. I know I haven't been disappointed in anything I've gotten from Home Field. I don't think you will either. All right, let's jump into the questions. Smenges gets us started. Smenges, we appreciate you always being a regular on these mailbags. You're always one of the first questions in and always ask some good questions. Says, with the Rodney Hammond nagging injury and the patchwork offensive line not getting a push on running plays, do you think Pitt should call even more than the nearly 50 pass plays called versus Wake Forest and only throw on 3rd and short, too? It's an interesting question. You know, Jim Hammett and I had a long conversation on Wednesday night during the live stream about why Pitt is dead last in the ACC in rushing attempts right now. Like 227 rushing attempts or so. I think they're tied for last with Florida State in rushing attempts in the conference. And we couldn't get our head around it. You know, a team with Pat Narduzzi as the head coach and Frank Cignetti as the offensive coordinator is last in the conference in rushing attempts. Make it make sense. It doesn't make sense. Why would that be? Why would they be ranked so low? Why, not even ranked. Why would they be attempting so few rush rushes. And part of it is that their overall offense doesn't have many plays. I think they're last or next to last in total offensive plays run. And so, I mean, they're I think they're down near the bottom in time of possession. They're just not generating a lot of offense to begin with. So all the numbers are going to be down, and they certainly are. But you would still think this team would have more of a commitment to the running game. And if there's been there's been a lot of complaints about the offense and a lot of complaints about the run game. But if there's one thing that has jumped out to me since the season has started, really dating back to the Cincinnati game, is that it has often felt like they are not committed enough to the run. Now, maybe that's for good reason. Maybe they don't feel like they can get much out of the run game. As you said, maybe they don't feel like they're getting a great push out of the offensive line. Maybe they don't feel like they've got great options at running back. If Rodney Hammond is not going to get more than 15 snaps and 3 carries in a game, which is what he got in the Wake Forest game, maybe it's a matter of they just don't feel all that confident. I do think they should feel some added confidence about the passing game coming out of the last 2 weeks with Christian Bear. It hasn't been perfect. It hasn't even been great, but it has had moments where it's looked pretty good. And I think there's been a steady improvement over the course of those 2 games that Bear has started. The passing game seems to be operating better, seems to be more successful and effective. I don't think they're going to become a pass-first offense, nor do I think they should be. But, I mean, to your point, Smedges, I mean, when you look at the numbers from that game, I'm just going to scroll up to the box score here. In the Wake Forest game, Vera ran through 45 pass attempts, and, Flemister and Hammond had 26, rushing attempts. So, maybe they are a pass-first offense. Maybe we've seen a morphing of Pitt's offense from this run-heavy, run-focused unit to something that favors the pass a little bit more. I'm sure Pat Narduzzi would like to favor the run, but right now, maybe you have to go with what's working, and maybe what's working is the passing game. And yeah, to your point, they converted. I had all the third downs written here. At Wake Forest on the first drive, they converted a 3rd and 3 and a 3rd and 1, and they did both of them with the pass. Later, when they had a 3rd and 3 and they handed it off to Rodney Hammond, they got stuffed for no gain. 3rd and 2, they handed it off to Sebo Flemister. They lost a yard. 3rd and 3, they handed it off to Sebo Flemister. They lost a yard. So maybe throwing, even in those short yardage situations on 3rd down, might be their best option. It was more effective than passing in the Wake Forest game, small sample size, but still. So maybe you're right. Maybe they should be even a little more pass heavy and pass first than they were against Wake Forest. GMO5 Pitt has a question that I really like, and I think it's really interesting. He says, grade Christian Bear through 2 full starts, please. Also, who is your first half offensive and defensive MVPs? Grading Bear through 2 full starts, I would give him... It's so hard because, he's thrown... How many passes has he thrown in these 2 games? He threw 45 against Wake Forest, and he threw 26 against Louisville. So that's, 71 passes? I mean, I look at it, and he's thrown for 500 and some yards in 2 games. He's thrown for 4 touchdowns and no interceptions. He's only been sacked once, which part of it is a testament to the offensive line. Part of it is a testament to him getting rid of the ball quickly, which is something that Phil Djokovic struggled with. I mean... If I was going to give him a grade, I mean, I don't think I would go lower than a C+. And quite frankly, I mean, I would probably go into the B range, B minus, somewhere around there. I think, the only thing that's really holding me back is sort of the consistency. And when we talk about those 10 drives where all they got was a field goal, between the 2 touchdown drives at Wake Forest, there are a lot of things that sunk those various possessions. But the quarterback play, I mean, was one of them. He, could have played better and extended some of those drives and kept them going and gotten more points and potentially more touchdowns that would have put the game away and put it out of reach so that Wake Forest wouldn't have been able to get back into it at the end. And so, I mean, that sort of holds me back a little bit. He had, 130 or 140 yards on 2 touchdown drives, and then 160 basically the rest of the game, the other 12 possessions or whatever it was, or 11 possessions. And so, you need a little bit more of a consistent performance start to finish, not just 2 drives, but you need a little bit more than that. But on the whole, 4 touchdowns in 2 starts, no interceptions in 2 starts, 500 yards in 2 starts, throws for 300 yards in this game. I mean, I like what I've seen. And I like that he seemed to get better against Wake than he was against Louisville, and you'd like to see that improvement continue? Now, this is the question that I'd like to see in the comments what you guys think, and on the message boards at Panther-Lair.com about offensive MVP and defensive MVP. And it's hard to hand these out when a team is 2-5, because when you're talking about an MVP, you're sort of inevitably talking about somebody who's playing well, and when you're talking about a team that's 2-5, you're inevitably talking about a team that's not playing well. Who's the offensive MVP and the defensive MVP? And this is something where I sat down and I read the question and then started recording, and I didn't take time to think about who I think that answer is. And I'm not really sure. I don't know. I still don't have an answer. Who's the offensive MVP? Sibo Flemister is the leading rusher. 282 net yards on 68 carries, 2 touchdowns, 2 rushing touchdowns, plus 1 receiving touchdown. Rodney Hammond's got 3 rushing touchdowns. There's Djokovic and Veer. I don't think you can call a guy the MVP after 2 starts. It seems a little premature. Konate Mumfield is their leading receiver, 30 catches for 347 yards and 3 touchdowns. I don't know if he necessarily feels like he is the MVP of this offense. Bub Means is, he only has 20 catches as opposed to Mumfield having 30, but he's got 326 yards. He's averaging 16 yards per catch. He's got 3 touchdowns. But all of that came in the last 3 games. So just like I can't really call Veer the MVP after just 2 starts, I'm not sure I can call Means the MVP after 3 good games when his previous 4 were not good. Gavin Bartholomew leads the team in yards per catch at 18 yards per catch. He's 310 yards on 17 receptions, but he's got 17 catches through 7 games. He should be in the MVP conversation, but I can't say that he is. And on the offensive line, if you want to go to that area, they've all moved around. Who are you going to point to there? I think the biggest problem with trying to find an MVP of the offense is that the offense has been so bad for the better part of 7 games that it's hard to pick one. If the season had to end right now, who's the first half MVP? This is probably like one of those Compass Bowls, those BBVA Compass Bowls, where it's like, I don't know, who do you even pick as the MVP of this game? I guess you have to pick the leading rusher, or the leading touchdown score. I guess you would have to pick, God, I don't even know. Who leads in scoring? There's 1, 2, 3, 4 guys who have scored 3 touchdowns each. Means, Flemister, Hammond, and Mumfield. Total offense, or not. Total offense favors the quarterbacks. In terms of, do we have an all-purpose yards? Sibo Flemister leads in all-purpose yards. He's got 282 rushing yards, 92 receiving yards, and 3 touchdowns. I guess Sibo. I guess that would have to be it, because he leads in all-purpose yards and he's scored 3 touchdowns. But that's one of those things where it's like you don't really want to pick any of these guys because it's been such a mess. Now, defense, I think there's probably some better options. I think there are a few options that you can look at. I'm looking at guys like Javon McIntyre. He's second on the team in tackles with 45. Donovan McMillan leads the team in tackles with 57. He had that 18 tackle game against West Virginia. And typically that boundary safety position is going to pile up more tackles. But Javon McIntyre with 45 tackles, 1.5 tackles for loss, 4 pass breakups officially. I think Solomon DeShields is in that conversation. He's third on the team in tackles, 6.5 tackles for loss. That leads the team. He's got 2 sacks and a quarterback hurry. He's got some big plays that he has made. I would probably look at one of those 2 guys, either McIntyre or DeShields, as the defensive MVP of the first half. That would be my option. I think that's a little bit easier than the offensive MVP, but if you have a suggestion, if you have a thought on that, I'd love to hear it, because I think it's really hard to pick an offensive MVP right now. Still don't know. It's almost Sibo by default, just because he's put up the most yards and he's tied for the team lead in touchdowns. Next question. I like this one too. Not Panther Hog 1. Although Panther Hog 1 asks, is Phil Dracovic on fake punt duties this week? Last time they went out there, they tried to run a fake punt where they put Jeff George in number 96. They tried to sneak him out onto the field and run a fake, a trick play, if you recall. And it went horribly awry. So Hopefully they don't try to do that with Djokovic this week, although you can't rule anything out. They might try to sneak him out there in a 90 jersey, 90 something, to put him out there and try and run a trick play. But look, here's my thought. And there's a different question I wanted to get to, but I started reading Panther Hog 1's question, so I'm just gonna answer it. Will Phil Djokovic catch a pass this game or this year? Maybe not. I don't know. As a tight end, I don't know. But I do think if they throw a pass to Phil Djokovic at any point in any game before Gavin Bartholomew has gotten like 10 targets in that game, then it's malpractice. I mean, like, we're talking about, should they try and throw to Phil? No, you should try to throw to Gavin. You should try to throw to the actual tight end who is really, really good and is criminally underused. You should actually get the ball to that guy and fully use him in the offense and let him make the impact that he can make before you start getting goofy and throwing to the former quarterback playing tight end. That's my soapbox on that one. No, the question I did want to get to is Skater Pitt, who says, with the excitement for the basketball season growing, which 3 players are you most excited to see this upcoming season? Goes on to say, I think I would go Blake, Carrington, and Lowe. Blake to see if he can take the next step, and the 2 freshman guards because I've totally bought into the hype. But there are a lot of other pieces to be excited about for this upcoming season. So I talked a lot of basketball in yesterday's Morning Pit. And there was even a conversation that kind of followed on the message boards. And one thing that has really stood out to me, one thing I can't get over and is very interesting to me, is that there's a lot of storylines that are really compelling with this team. And not in a how can they bounce back from tragedy kind of way or something like that. There are a lot of storylines in terms of you can go almost every guy 1 through 5, 6, 7, 8, maybe 1 through 8. Maybe 9, actually. You could go 1 through... 1 through 9 of who I think will be there 1 through 9 and find a pretty interesting storyline about every one of those guys. I mean, 2 of those guys are the freshman guards, like you mentioned, Bub Carrington and Jalen Lowe. Super intrigued by those guys. I mean, they look like they might be the most talented freshmen to come through this program since Xavier Johnson and Trey McGowan's, particularly at the guard position. But like we talked about yesterday, they're coming into a situation where they've got veteran leadership on this team who can set the tone for them and help them understand about culture and the locker room and what it takes to actually win, which, McGowan's and Johnson did not have. Now, whether it would have impacted them or not, I don't know. We can't, it's hypothetical to say whether good leaders would have molded Johnson and McGowan's into something else. We'll never know what would have become of that situation, but we know that Carrington and Lowe have that leadership above them, and it's from guys who learned by playing with and learning from Nelly Cummings and Jamarius Burton and Nike Sabani and Greg Elliott. And so really intrigued, and so you've got these 2 freshman guards who are really talented, really athletic, should be really good basketball players walking into a situation where they should have a good idea of what it takes to win, and those lessons should be imparted to them. Super intrigued to see what happens there. Ishmael Leggett coming in as a transfer from Rhode Island, a guy who, again, as I talked about yesterday, at Rhode Island was forced to put up a ton of shots and forced to take what was the number I said yesterday? 400 shots or something like that last year because he had to do it because they had nobody else who could score. So he's going to go from being this go-to high volume guy to something where he ideally should be far more efficient as a secondary scorer. He doesn't have to be the leading scorer. He doesn't have to be the only guy who puts up points because he's got Blake Hinson on his team and he's got these freshman guards and he's got Zach Austin and the guys down low. Ishmael Leggett can just focus on getting good shots instead of having to take all the shots. And I think there's a high expectation that that's going to be really beneficial for him and by extension for Pitt. Zach Austin coming in from High Point. Again, the phrase I keep using, they didn't have a guy like him last year. They didn't have someone with his size, his athleticism, his shooting ability, and his defense and rebounding. Like they haven't had a guy like that in a while. And we'll probably at some point talk about who the comparison is for him. But they haven't really had a player like that. They certainly didn't have a player like that last year. And his presence almost alone is a big part of the reason why I think this year's team will look and play very different from how last year's team played and looked. So really intrigued to see what he can do. Then there's Blake Hinson, who I fully expect to see him be even better than he was a year ago, which is pretty exciting because he was damn good last year. I expect to see him take a step forward in his rebounding and a step forward in his defense while still being a stone cold killer from outside, willing to pull up from half court and somewhat likely to actually make those shots, which was the case last year. And then you have the triplets, right? You have Federico, and the Diaz-Graham twins. I think they all three take a big step forward this year, partially due to the physical strength they added, partially due to just having the experience of having played last season. I think that experience is going to do wonders for them. They're still not going to be the strongest guys on the court in a lot of games, a lot of ACC games, but I think they'll have a better understanding of how to play. They'll have a better understanding of where to play, and they'll be just a little bit stronger, which will give them cut down on that disadvantage in that department. So how many guys is that? That's the starting five of Carrington, Leggett, Austin, Hinson, Federico. Then there's the twins, Jalen Lowe, and Will Jeffress. Will Jeffress would be the ninth guy. I think he probably would be number 9 in the rotation, depending on how things sort of shake out. But he's just as intriguing as any of them. After missing all of last season with an injury, a guy who's got natural talent, but just needs to find his role and get an opportunity to be on the court and play. And I don't know what his role is going to be this year. Jeff Capel has said that, in an ideal world, he would be like a 3-and-D type of guy who could make threes and play defense. Even if he just offers you that defense, even if he just helps you on the glass and plays good defense at the other end of the court, I think he can be a huge asset to this team. And I really think that if you look at, if you talk about Will Jeffress, there's probably nobody that these players and these coaches and probably the fans would like to see have success more than him. Because he's someone that I think there was a lot of hype and excitement about him coming in. He didn't live up to it the first couple of years. He got hurt last year, and now he's finally back. He had to sit out. That was a tough year for him to watch and not be able to be a part of it and celebrate and fully enjoy it with his teammates. And so I think he's excited about getting back, and I think they're excited about having him back. So again, another really interesting guy to watch. So you asked me, who are the 3 players I'm most excited to watch? I just named 9. Because it kind of does extend out that far. I'm so intrigued by this team. I'm so interested to watch this team more than probably any team that I can think of in a long time, because of the hype of the freshmen, the sort of what the 2 transfers bring, the expectations for the returning guys down low, and then we talked about like guys like Will Jeffress. I think it's such an interesting team. And I think it's going to be a really interesting team to watch this year. I think it's going to be an exciting season to follow. I don't know what their win total is because there's enough of an unknown factor there, particularly with freshman guards and then transfers who are moving up a level. There's a big unknown factor there. You just don't know how it's all going to translate, but sure do like a lot of the pieces. Sure do. All right, we have blown past the 20-minute mark. See, I always want to get to all of the questions, but we just run out of time. And, my producer's in my ear telling me, Chris, you got to cut it off. You got to cut it off. I'm just kidding. I don't have a producer. I made that up. I like to pretend like this is like a real broadcast situation, but we don't really take commercial breaks or anything like that. I just tell you about Home Field. So go over to homefieldapparel.com, use the promo code LAIR23, LAIR23 to get your pick gear, 15% off your first order. At Home Field, get something nice to wear for these games that are remaining in November or heading into basketball season. You're going to want to check out what they've got. Homefieldapparel.com. Like this video and subscribe so you don't miss any of our Pitt video content, and then spend all of your time right there. Panther-Lair.com. Pittsburgh.rivals.com. Thanks so much for tuning in today. It's been a lot of fun. I appreciate you watching all week. It's been a lot of fun this week. Feel like we've had some good conversations. And we will meet again tomorrow after Pitt Notre Dame in South Bend. We'll see how that game goes, and whether it's a win or a loss, we'll be talking about it right here on the live post-game show. So like and subscribe, and we will talk to you tomorrow right here, youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com.